Hello everyone, Ogre27 Kane here today, and I think I want to do a review of Unsouled for the Nintendo Switch. Let's do an overview and find out what this game is all about. First up though, let's start out with some spoilers. So as a general rule, I like to shoot between 3 and 5 hours of footage for most of my videos. This game, on the other hand, only took me 3 hours and 42 minutes to beat, therefore I show a lot of the game off itself. There's a ton of extra content and side stuff to do at the end, as well as different endings and multiple souls to find that will help you in your journey and give you different variation in the gameplay. But you will stick to the same general 3 to 4 hour loop to find most of this stuff, and all of the secrets are hidden within this world. Now, being a top-down 2D pixel art Dark Souls clone, it does its job very well, and it does make you want to play it back through and see the new Game Plus features. So let's start out with gameplay. So the gameplay in this is, like I said, a top-down Dark Souls 2D pixel art clone, but the art and animation lends itself well to the gameplay, and the gameplay is fairly fluid and it has a lot of the same features you'd expect from said game. There's a block, there's a parry, there's a counter attack, there's a light attack, there's a strong attack, and there are different magics that you can essentially use. You also have souls that give you different abilities and allow you to chain and combo things together. As you learn to chain all of these moves together, the gameplay features themselves lend themselves to this world and allow you to use them to explore, along with defeating enemies and finding secrets. Ultimately, the gameplay loop in this is fairly satisfying. It sees you starting out at the beginning of a chapter with a little bit of dialogue and story, and then you speak to somebody at a campfire, ultimately moving on to upgrade your weapons and armor if you choose to, items and abilities, and then going into the next level. You then beat a ton of different enemies, explore the level, find any secrets you want to, and move on to a boss. All the boss fights in this game are really fun and engaging, but they are fairly easy on the lower difficulties. They do ramp up extremely high on the higher difficulties, at least for me, and the gameplay loop is satisfying enough to keep you wanting to see the next boss, next area. The last thing of gameplay I do need to mention is I feel like there are a lot of abilities and cool ideas that were left behind. So let's move on now to the story. So this story sees you as essentially a prince who wakes up and tries to figure out what's going on, why his sister or family are doing whatever they're doing. As a specific family member goes around in a trail of blood and kills everybody, attempting to kill you multiple times, you finally track her down and kill her. Now, that's just the first playthrough, and I don't really want to give you much more than that because there are secret bosses that you have to beat and certain areas you have to discover in order to figure out the true story and figure out what's truly going on here. There's a lot more at play, and there are several characters outside of the reach that you don't even see right off the bat. Most of the cutscenes that you'll see in this game basically allude to these story elements, but you don't really understand them at first, and these characters don't really make sense to you until you play it through, like I said, a few times. One of the things I do have to mention that I really do like about this story is that the main character seems like he's a little bit more focused and a little bit less on the emotional side of things or instability. He's very sure of his goal regardless of what it is and what you're trying to accomplish, and he will accomplish his goal. The other nice thing is that the other characters that try to mess with him and play these mental games with him don't really ever succeed because of his own personal mental fortitude. I really like seeing that kind of strength in a main character, and it gives you a lot of pause to engage with him and see his story arc all the way through. So I think we should move on now to the combat. Well, the combat in this game is pretty reminiscent of any other top-down RPG you may have ever played. What I do like about it, though, is that they incorporated a lot of speed, very reminiscent of something like Hades, into it. Yes, you do have a stamina meter, but it doesn't really sap a lot of it to be able to bounce around the room and move around to chain these attacks together. I love that fact because it doesn't punish you for making your movements fast and frenetic. As a matter of fact, it can actually benefit you because if you attack right before an enemy does, it will counter them and you can essentially just chain your attacks through enemy after enemy. The other cool element to combat in this game is how your souls upgrade with you and they enhance your character's attack and ability too. I could essentially see this game becoming a speedrunner's dream just because of how the combat works, and how you're essentially just as powerful at the beginning as you are at the end as long as you know how to use the movement correctly. Yes, there's a very in-depth upgrade chart that allows you to upgrade all of your different moves and teaches you how to use them. There's also an area to basically just go wild in and learn to use the combat. But let's move on now to graphics and animations. Well, the graphics and animations in this game are a pixel art style, but that doesn't hold anything back. The frame rate is very stable, pretty much locked. I never had any issues with that. There is some weird frame juddering, but I think that's part of the movement sets and the animations of attack and combat themselves. None of that will bother you after you get used to it and you kind of prepare for these things as they occur, but as you can see on screen, there's a lot going on, and if you're not prepared for the enemies attacking you, then this can throw you off. I don't see these as performance issues because I never had the game crash, glitch, or error on me in any sort of way, and everything moved very stable, which is kind of odd for a game of this style. The other thing I need to mention about the graphics and animations in this is that there's a weird 3D, 2D perspective that pops into it at certain times. Some of the abilities you have to use in some of the cutscenes will utilize this perspective, and it kind of messed with me at first. The pixel art style is a little bit off and it zooms in too close and makes it a little blurry. I think if they would have worked on these sections and refined them a little bit more, they would have looked a little bit better. But that's not to say they take anything away from the game, and they actually are pretty fun and inclusive as far as the story goes. One thing I do have to mention though, is that this game does have some weird collision detection as far as the enemies and the items themselves on screen. There were times when I swore I thought I hit enemies and I went right through them, and there were times when I bounced off another enemy on the side and it ricocheted and killed an enemy. Not really major gripes, fairly minor gripes, but very interesting to say the least, and they do kind of mess with you when you're trying to put together a chain of attacks. So let's move on now to the next category, controls and audio. Well, let's start with the controls, and they're pretty much what you expect. The control stick maneuvers you around, and the triggers and bumpers turn on your counterattacks and blocks. Your strong attack is the A button, and your weak attack is the Y button. You have other abilities chained to the X and B buttons, and your D-pad allows you to switch and maneuver between different abilities that you gain from souls. Well, let's touch on the audio real quick. And the audio in this game is really fantastic as far as the music. The sound effects are good too, but there is no spoken dialogue. Doesn't bother me at all to read text boxes, but it is something you have to do in this game. So let's show some of it off now. Pretty darn excellent if you ask me. I really enjoyed it, and I have a blast every time the music changes, so let's do conclusion now. Well, in conclusion, I think this game is a fun little package. I paid $35 for it physically, and I didn't mind that at all. I got my 5 to 10, maybe 15 hours worth of gameplay out of it, and I will put it on my shelf and probably play it again because it does have certain artistic value to me. I really enjoy these kind of games, and I like supporting indie developers, especially when they choose to give us these games physically. Now, if I was buying this game digitally, I'd probably spend a little less and maybe look for a sale because it's not a terribly large game. But other than that, it's worth your money and your time. It's a fun little Dark Souls clone. So thanks for watching today's video. It was a blast to make. I upload every single Monday. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. And have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre 27 Kane signing out.